Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. We've got some big time storms to be concerned about later on this evening and into the daytime tomorrow, as well as the heat is relentless heading into next week. In fact, a third of the country sees heat indices of 105 plus all week long. So let's take a look at the setup. Going forward on the water vapor imagery, we have a storm complex that moved through in and around the Chicago region this morning, actually knocked out some power up there, and that is continuing to portions of Indiana. But back behind it, you can already see the new complex of storms that's originating up across portions of North Dakota. These will continue to intensify east to southeastward as we get closer into the evening time frame and really turn severe, packing a punch with some very damaging winds, likely up to 70, possibly 80 miles an hour into the overnight time frame. So let's really break down the details for you, because we have a lot of heat to be concerned about. We've got southwest winds coming in, and all these areas highlighted in the orange shaded area, those are your heat advisories. That is your heat indices of 105 to 110 range. And where you see the pink shaded areas, that is 110 plus with the excessive heat warnings. And these are some of the areas that are actually going to be seeing the big time thunderstorms later on this evening. In fact, they've got a lot of CAPE, a lot of convective available potential to work with within this atmosphere, fueling the higher dew points with these storms. CAPE values are well into the 5,000 range. So there's plenty of energy in the atmosphere to tap into later on tonight. And that's why I see this to be a damaging wind threat. I think it originates as a kind of a larger hail threat, isolated tornado threat, and then it congeals into very strong gusty winds upwards of 70, possibly 80 miles an hour within this sector. You can actually see it when we look at the maximum wind gusts later on tonight through the next 24 hours, taking you through tomorrow morning. Yes, we've got all these areas highlighted in these reds and orange shaded areas. That's where you could see some of these peak wind gusts of those 60, 70, possibly 80 miles an hour is probably not going to be ruled out. In fact, I thought I saw a 73 mile per hour just this morning. So you know those are going to be a little bit more intense, what you saw this morning. So if you are in the market for a weather station, I definitely highly recommend the Tempest from Weatherflow. It's actually the one I've had for the last 3 years. I feel it's the best one on the market. The cool thing about it is it's a complete 5-in-1 system. It's all solar, and it literally takes only 10 minutes to install. You got a convenient app to download, plus a desktop version. You can be part of the 55,000 now that actually have a Tempest across the nation. And if you're interested, I do have a discount code, which is PALPonder10, gives you a 10% off and free shipping at checkout. So if you'd like to order one, I'll have it in the link in the description below, so you can click on it and possibly order one for yourself. But here's the setup going forward. So the Storm Prediction Center did in fact actually keep this as an enhanced risk, but we are going to get more updates later on today. And possibility there's a small pocket of this area could actually be upgraded to a moderate risk. But either way, the main impact from this storm complex is going to be winds. So right now they do have that widespread enhanced risk across Sioux Falls, portions of the Des Moines region, back into Milwaukee. It does include the Chicago region. I feel like this is likely going to be expanding. And these will continue into the overnight hours, impacting the Grand Rapids regions, back into the Indianapolis, back into Columbus, reaching it all the way into Detroit, possibly even to Pittsburgh by the time we head into tomorrow morning. But yes, they are going to be starting off as a larger hail threat. So in Sioux Falls, definitely can't be ruled out some of those tennis ball, maybe even some baseball size hail with this activity. And that's going to continue on. So I think this is all going to get going around 6, 7 o'clock tonight, and then really get activated as we swing through portions of Iowa, getting into Illinois, northern Illinois. And that's where I see, you can see some of the highest wind gust and more of an isolated pockets of a tornado threat within this sector. Right now we have a 2%. I likely is going to be upgraded to at least a 5%. But yes, don't let your guard down up here with all three modes of severe storms. And I think it gets going around 6, 7, 8 o'clock. This is what the radar looks like potentially around 8 o'clock this evening, you can see these little isolated supercell thunderstorms, these little bubblers, renegade thunderstorms. Yes, all these thunderstorms, approaching 60,000 foot cloud tops potentially. And those will be activated with some big time hail producers and an isolated tornado threat. And these, I think it all congeals into kind of a more of a little bit, these squall lines that will be racing across east southeastward through the Chicago region, 9-10 o'clock tonight, and then entering portions of Indiana back into Michigan here towards 11 midnight time frame, and then it just continues in the wee hours of the morning, getting into Indiana and portions of Ohio. So between now and tomorrow morning on Saturday, here's these complexes that originate somewhere in the vicinity of Iowa, back into portions of Wisconsin, goes down into the Chicago region, and then really gets going into the overnight hours with more of a kind of a heavier rain threat into Indiana, on top of the stronger wind gusts you're going to be impacting with these storms. And then you'll have some higher rain amounts on the western side of Ohio. And then further to the south, you do have this little tropical wave that is going to be impacting portions of Florida, along the eastern periphery of Georgia, as well as into Carolina there. But as we get into Saturday, this continue to dive south. So you have that marginal risk impacting St. Louis. These are more the early morning, mid-afternoon type variety. And then we head on to later on into the late afternoon, early evening time frame, taking advantage of more of that peak heating. These are going to be a little bit more elevated back into the Roanoke region, Charleston, back into Richmond, into DC, into Baltimore. Remember, these are the same areas that have the high indices, the heat advisories right now, the excessive heat warnings. So they'll have the same higher dew points and the same energy to tap into once this system gets into this area. So these storms are also going to be packing a punch later on into the afternoon, early evening time frame on your Saturday. So definitely be on high aware, because you likely have plans for Saturday evening. So these storms may disrupt that a little bit. So definitely be on high alert and take it, for all watches and warnings. But the heat is going to be the real deal, folks. So here's the breakdown. So we got a pretty massive heat wave, 125 million people. That's literally about a third of the country is going to be seeing those heat indices 105 plus really all week long. So the breakdown from the 28th to the 29th through Saturday, if you live north of this boundary, that's where you're seeing the high heat indices with those 105, 110 plus, for the next 2 days. But then we have a pretty significant, little cold front trough, backdoor trough that's going to be entering these regions, cooling you down. But further to the south, this is where they pretty much put on the brakes, and the heat is just going to be relentless all week long, with numerous records likely to be broken. Heat indices topping the 105, 110 range. And the heat just really maximizes as the high pressure just parks over the southern plains, and it just bakes the whole area really for the entire week. So the breakdown on Sunday, this is where that little cool front puts on the brakes, right? So it pretty much stops right along this zone. So further south, you're going to be locked into that heat really all week long. We do try to, with the high pressure going to be over a good part of the southern plains, it does open the door a little bit more of a monsoonal flow that comes in. It's probably going to be enough, likely by Sunday, if not Sunday, Monday, to drop Phoenix below the 110 barrier, which they haven't seen in almost a month. And that's going to be producing some, likely some rain entering those areas where they desperately need the rain. Been bone dry out there into Sunday afternoon, heading into your Monday time frame. So here's the breakdown for Monday to end the month of July. And there's where the cold front is, right? So further south, that's where you're looking at widespread triple digits, and it's going to be feeling really comfortable if you live north of this boundary. I'm talking into the 80s, if not into the 70s. So let's look at some of these temperatures further south, for Monday, because the high pressure is really going to be locked over the southern plains. Widespread triple digits take over across Louisiana, a good part of Texas, North Texas into Oklahoma, as well as into Kansas. I mean, these temperatures, 105, 108 potentially in Dallas. So yes, this is definitely going to be a pretty intense heat wave coming through. And I think it even actually gets stronger. Probably Tuesday might be your highest day, right along the 109, 108 range in the DFW area, 111 in Wichita Falls, 110 in Oklahoma. So yes, some of these are going to be, really cranking up the thermometer and really just parking there and just sitting there, kind of like I mentioned, all week long. But further to the north, taking advantage of that backdoor trough, these are the comfortable conditions. So yes, you are dealing with those excessive heat watches and warnings right now. You got the storms, but this is the prize at the end of the tunnel with this backdoor trough coming in. And these are high temperatures on Tuesday for your first day of August, folks. That's going to be really nice. We're talking upper 60s in portions of Maine, low 70s into Vermont and New Hampshire, back down towards the coast, and to New York City could drop into the 70s. This is going to be for some really comfortable air. Look at Pittsburgh, around 78 degrees, folks. Ohio in the 80 range. So that's going to be feeling really nice. And then if you head out west to the Pacific Northwest, it might be a little warmer, but you really haven't been baked into the intense heat. I mean, I saw Seattle 91 twice so far this summer. Last time was July the 15th. And you ain't going to come close to that the next 10 days. You're talking low 80s, if not upper 70s for the next 10 days. And the heart of summer, folks. So this is not much heat to contend with. All the heat is going to be in the southwest and much of the southern plains, where you just really intensify. But if there's any good thing about it, maybe it's going to be more of a dry heat. Obviously, these areas are bone dry, hasn't seen much rainfall in a while. And yes, you are going to be seeing very high temperatures, but the dew point, your relative humidity is going to be coming down in the afternoon time frame. Unfortunately, is more of a dry heat, which includes a higher fire risk, especially out in West Texas. But you're not going to be feeling the oppressive. You could still see the excessive heat warnings, mainly because of the actual temperature, but not because really the heat index is going to be that far off. So whatever the temperature is, the heat index is going to be right there with it. In some areas, obviously in the southwest, the heat index is going to be a little bit less than what the actual temperatures is. But more or less, you get the picture. It's going to be hot, but it's not going to be feeling like a sauna out there. It's just going to be feeling like a dry sauna. So further to the north, here's the setup, right? So obviously, if the ridge is going to be parked over Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas, that's going to put any potential storm complex on the northern periphery of that. So with the high shifting a tad bit back to the southwest again, and you're likely going to be back into the 110 plus range, that puts the storm track just a tad bit further south. So areas that are getting it this week might line up later into next week a little bit further south. So here's the high pressure by Thursday. So that's why these temperatures aren't going anywhere but up all next week in Oklahoma and Texas, with the high really centered over this neck of the woods. But there's the on the northern periphery of that high, that's where these storm placements are going to be if anything comes to fruition. But check this out. I mean, this is the ensemble guidance. I mean, I went back 11 days from now. This is Monday, August the 7th on the ensembles, and that's a 600 DM showing up into New Mexico. That's going to be some intense heat, folks. This heat wave is going to be the real deal. I mean, we've seen some hot temperatures down these areas, but when you get a 600 DM showing up on an ensemble 11 days out, you know that heat is going to be intense by the time it actually gets there. So this heat, it unfortunately, if you live down there, it's not going anywhere, folks. It is just not going anywhere. But here's the placement on basically that 11 days with the heat, with that ridge locked over the southwest and much of Texas. Obviously, these areas are dry, but it's going to be putting the complex with the northwest flow shifting it a little bit further south. So instead of, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, back into northern Illinois, it's going to put it a little bit further south. So Neil, the storm origination is likely going to be in Montana, into Wyoming, back into Nebraska, getting into southern flank of Iowa, and heading into the northern portions of Missouri, as we go into next week. And I still feel a good part of the Northeast continues to remain on the overall wetter side, which you have been as of late. And I think that actually continues as we get deeper in the next week, even and beyond that. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update where I protect you before and after the storm.